Picture this. It's 1732 in Westmoreland County, Virginia. A historic year indeed, as February 22nd marks the birth of a future American icon, George Washington. Born to Augustine and Mary Ball Washington, George was one of 6 children growing up amidst the verdant plantations of Virginia. The early chapters of his life were quite humble. Unlike many of his contemporaries, George didn't have the privilege of a formal education. But what he lacked in schooling, he made up for in curiosity and determination. From an early age, George was fascinated with military arts. He'd spend hours studying military campaigns and strategies, showing an inclination towards leadership and discipline. His early years were not just about the plantations and military books, though. They were also about forming the character of a man who would later lead a nation. As a young man, George Washington's life was about to take a turn towards the extraordinary. Fast forward to 1754, a 22-year-old George Washington finds himself in the midst of the French and Indian War. As a young lieutenant colonel leading the Virginia Regiment, Washington faced a formidable task. His mission? To challenge the French control of the Ohio River Valley, a strategic and highly coveted region. Washington was a natural leader, possessing a blend of courage and charisma that inspired his men. His bravery was never more apparent than in the Battle of Monongahela, where despite being heavily outnumbered, he rallied his troops and fought relentlessly. Although they were ultimately defeated, Washington's display of courage and determination in the face of adversity earned him immense respect among his soldiers and superiors. But the war was not just about brave battles. It was a trial by fire for Washington, who had to grapple with the harsh realities of frontier warfare. He faced numerous challenges, from the brutal winter weather to the scarcity of supplies and the constant threat of disease. Yet, through it all, Washington remained resolute, his unwavering spirit serving as a beacon of hope for his beleaguered men. His leadership during the war was also marked by moments of strategic brilliance. His decision to fortify Fort Necessity, for instance, was a masterstroke that held off French forces for a significant period. Although the fort eventually fell, it demonstrated Washington's ability to think on his feet and make critical decisions under pressure. The respect Washington earned during the French and Indian War was not just limited to his own troops. His reputation reached the ears of the British military elite, who recognized his potential and offered him a commission in the British Army, an honor rarely extended to colonials. In the end, the French and Indian War was more than just a military campaign for Washington. It was a crucible that shaped his character, honed his leadership skills, and set the stage for his future role in the founding of a nation. The French and Indian War was a defining moment for Washington, a stepping stone towards his future role as a leader. In 1759, George Washington exchanged his military life for a quieter one at Mount Vernon. But this wasn't just a geographical shift. It was also the year he married Martha Dandridge Custis, a wealthy widow, making Washington one of Virginia's most prosperous men overnight. Their union was one of mutual respect and affection, and Martha's financial wealth allowed Washington to expand his land and interests at Mount Vernon. Here he took on the life of a planter, cultivating tobacco and wheat, and experimenting with new crops and farming techniques. His days were filled with overseeing operations, while his evenings were often spent reading or entertaining guests. Simultaneously, Washington's influence grew as he served in Virginia's House of Burgesses, representing Fairfax County. He was a respected member, vocal about his opinions on Britain's colonial policies. Though Washington enjoyed his life at Mount Vernon, destiny had other plans. Little did he know, a revolution was on the horizon, and his quiet life was about to be disrupted. 1775 marked the beginning of the American Revolution, and George Washington was right at the heart of it. As the colonies braced for war, their need for a strong, decisive leader became paramount. This is where George Washington stepped in. In June of that same year, Washington was appointed as the Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army, an untrained and undisciplined military force. Even in the face of such odds, Washington was unfazed. He accepted his appointment with a sense of duty and humility, vowing to lead his men to victory or die trying. Washington's leadership during the American Revolution was nothing short of extraordinary. He was a strategic mastermind who knew that winning the war was not about winning every battle, but about outlasting the enemy. He focused on keeping his army intact and waiting for the right opportunities to strike. His perseverance was tested time and again during the long, arduous years of the Revolution. He faced numerous setbacks, from defeats on the battlefield to lack of supplies and the harsh winter at Valley Forge. But Washington remained steadfast. He managed to keep the morale of his men high, inspiring them with his resolve and commitment to their cause. Washington's strategies during the Revolution were revolutionary in their own right. He employed unconventional warfare techniques, such as guerrilla tactics and the use of misinformation, to throw off the British. These strategies, along with the assistance of French allies, gradually turned the tide of the war in favor of the colonies. And then in 1781, the moment that Washington had been tirelessly working towards finally arrived. After a decisive victory at Yorktown, the British surrendered, marking the end of the Revolutionary War. Washington had led the colonies to victory against all odds, proving that determination and strategic thinking can indeed overcome power and numbers. With the surrender of the British in 1781, Washington had led the colonies to victory, but his journey was far from over. His next challenge would be guiding the newly formed nation as its first president, a role he would take on with the same dedication and resolve that defined his military career. In 1789, George Washington steps into a new role, becoming the first president of the United States. This was a position of tremendous responsibility and potential, with Washington at the helm of a fledgling nation still finding its footing. His presidency was largely focused on unifying the country, strengthening its economy, and establishing a strong federal government. He was a firm believer in American independence and worked tirelessly to maintain neutrality in foreign affairs, a policy that was later enshrined as the Washington Doctrine. Under his administration, the United States adopted the Constitution and formed the first functional government. His leadership brought about the establishment of the nation's financial system and the creation of the first cabinet and Supreme Court. But perhaps one of his most significant contributions was his decision to step down after 2 terms. Despite having the opportunity to serve for life, Washington chose to relinquish his power, setting a precedent for future presidents. This voluntary departure from power was a testament to Washington's belief in democratic principles and remains a cornerstone of American democracy. His presidency wasn't without controversy, though. His policies, particularly those surrounding taxation and the national bank, were divisive and led to the formation of the country's first political parties. Yet, through every challenge, Washington remained steadfast, guided by his vision for a united and prosperous nation. It's important to remember that Washington was navigating uncharted territory. He was the first to occupy the presidency with no predecessor to guide him, and his actions would set the standard for those who followed. His leadership style, his policies, and his commitment to the nation left an indelible mark on the presidency and the country. Washington's presidency left an indelible mark on the nation, setting the stage for the future of American leadership. The final years of George Washington's life were spent back at Mount Vernon, where he passed away in 1799. At the age of 67, Washington finally retired from public life, trading the executive mansion for his beloved plantation. He spent these final years managing his estate, entertaining guests, and enjoying a well-deserved rest. However, even in retirement, Washington never fully withdrew from the nation he helped to create. He continued to influence American politics and policy, offering his wisdom and guidance when asked. His letters from this period show a man still deeply committed to the American cause, grappling with the challenges of a young nation finding its footing. In December of 1799, Washington fell ill and passed away. The news of his passing sent shockwaves across the United States and beyond. The nation plunged into mourning. His death marked the end of an era, the passing of the first American leader, a symbol of the nation's struggle for independence. Tributes poured in from every corner of the country, reflecting the deep respect and admiration the American people held for their first president. The Congress wore black armbands, businesses closed, and church bells tolled. The country he had led through war and peace mourned his loss deeply. But Washington's death did not mark the end of his influence. Quite the contrary, his legacy has endured and evolved, shaping America for centuries to come. He is remembered not just as the first president, but as a symbol of American ideals, courage, perseverance, leadership. His life story, from his humble beginnings in Virginia to his ascension to the presidency, continues to inspire. His leadership during the Revolutionary War, his commitment to the creation of a new nation, and his wisdom in navigating the presidency all contribute to his enduring image as the father of his country. George Washington's legacy continues to shape America, reminding us of the courage, perseverance, and leadership necessary to forge a nation.